Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, he claims his ex-wife won't leave him alone.
We've come out of our house and she's sitting across the road.
And you've been divorced how long?
15 years.
It's a battle of the exes.
You say the cops have been to your house 6 or 7 times in a month.
And a fiancé in the middle.
I am afraid that Christy will ruin my wedding.
Julie needs to mind her own business. My problem is with Michael. I don't know this girl. I don't care about her.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now. That's the knock everybody dreads. Well, Mike and Julia claim that ever since they got engaged in May, Mike's ex-wife, Christy, has sent the police to their home over 20 times. They claim she's consumed with jealousy, and they have even caught her stalking and spying on them. But Christy says she could care less about Mike and his 90-day fiancé, and has only used the police 3 or 4 times when their son didn't show up for her court-ordered weekends. Now, here's what Mike and his fiancée, Julia, have to say about that.
My ex-wife, Christy, is constantly harassing and stalking me. My ex-wife is lurking outside my house, calling the sheriff's department over, waking us up, just really causing havoc.
The situation with Christy has gotten completely out of control. Christy will show up to the house at random hours of the night. The last time that I saw Christy outside the house, she was in her car. She saw me and took off. I don't know what Christy is capable of. I just don't feel safe.
She's blown my phone up with messages saying that I'm a loser father, I'm a punk, I'm stupid, just being downright nasty. We have a 16-year-old son together. When Christy and I split up, my son lived with me because I had the stable home.
Christy does act like she can have Mike's son anytime she wants.
My son is a very busy kid. When my son refuses to see his mother, he gets told there's going to be repercussions. He's 16, 6'5", 218 pounds. How do I pick him up and force him into a vehicle? I think she's using my son as an excuse to get back at me.
I do feel like Christy's jealous of my relationship with Mike. After Mike and I got engaged, Christy started harassing and stalking us.
We're set to get married 35 days from now.
I am afraid that Christy will ruin my wedding.
Okay, guys, I'm glad you're here because there are kids involved in the middle of this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you've been divorced how long?
15 years.
15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in the 14 years and 9 months before this period of time, was it like this?
It's been this way the whole time.
But didn't you say that this all ramped up, this all started, this all became a problem when you two got engaged?
It definitely escalated. She's gotten away with sabotaging, previous relationships of mine.
Right.
And, it's just the same behavior on this one.
And you've had a few previous relationships,
Yes.
right? Like, how many times have you been engaged since the divorce?
3 times in the last 15 years.
3 times?
Yeah. Julia's my 3rd fiance.
Okay. And how long did y'all know each other before you...
Became engaged?
Well, before you moved in together?
Oh, God, I moved in like the first week.
A week?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you got engaged when?
A month later.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So whirlwind.
Yes, yeah. It was
Whirlwind.
love at first sight, so.
Okay.
So don't give up hope if you're looking.
Yeah. So this was love at first sight the 3rd time? Was it the same way with the other 2?
No, that's why
I'm just trying to see how you do these things. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the way it works out, I mean, you try until something works. I mean, obviously we didn't make it to the wedding day, and I see the red flags and any psychotic behavior, I'm out of here. I've got one of those already.
Okay. So you were the one that quit the other 2?
Yes.
They didn't quit you, you quit them?
Correct.
Okay. Were they whirlwind?
Most definitely.
Okay, so you're quick in, quick out?
No.
Well, I don't mean it that way.
Not a whirlwind. No.
I don't mean it that way. I mean...
I thought you meant as far as their behavior.
Yeah, I did.
But no, the last relationship I was in, I proposed to her a year after we
Okay, all right. So sometimes you let it unfold and see how things go. Now, Julia wrote in and says that you're being stalked and harassed by Christy.
Yes.
And describe stalking behavior to me. What do you consider
Well,
stalking
behavior, we've come out of our house a few times, and she's sitting across the road with her lights off, and, you know, it's just kind of creepy.
Julia says that Christy's delusional and thinks that she has custody of your son.
Correct.
But you think you have custody of your son.
I have all designated time with my child.
Yeah, well, you said in your tape piece that you have full custody of your son.
I'm going for full custody. They did give me all designated time with him. So it's kind of under his choice.
Well, that's actually not right. That's not what it says, but we'll get into that in a minute. And you say the cops have been to your house 6 or 7 times?
Yes.
Okay, and what do they do when they show up? What do they want?
It's usually in the middle of the night, wakes us up, and, you know, we have jobs and real lives, you know, and they come there with a story that Christy's given them. Like this last time, you know, they wanted to take him out of our home at midnight. He's 16, he's 6'5", 218 pounds. I guess go pick him up off the couch.
Have the police mentioned to all of y'all that this is not a good use of police resources?
Yes. And I agree with
seriously,
them.
that using police to parent a child, somebody could be getting robbed across town or whatever, and they're over here trying to parent your children.
Christy's called the sheriff's to my son's school last week, and because he wouldn't call her back. So they show up to his school, pulls him out of football, and says, "Why aren't you calling your mom back?"
And what was his reaction to that?
He said he's super embarrassed, and that's why he ain't calling back. He's getting caught in the middle of this, and, you know, it's his junior, senior year. These should be, like, the best years of his high school, and not have this.
So the police showed up to his football practice?
Yes, because he wasn't calling his mother back.
Do you do anything to keep him from calling back?
No.
Do you encourage him to call back?
Yeah, most definitely. I've always, you know, for the past few years, I've bought him cell phones, and sometimes it's tough because teenagers seem to break them more, and we have to replace them, and he's always had a way to contact his mom.
All right, well, Julia says Christy went crazy with jealousy after her engagement to Mike. Christy says she could care less about Julia and just wants to see her son.
I do believe that Mike's fiancée, Julia, is behind a lot of these claims of harassing and stalking. I'm just trying to see my son. I have been to Mike's house with police officers. I felt like I very much had no choice.
Christy is crazy. After Mike and I became engaged, Christy started calling Mike and telling him that he must be on drugs for wanting to marry someone after only a month of knowing them. She spread rumors about me, saying that I'm pregnant, that I was drinking while I was pregnant, just dragging my name through the mud. I think all of this is her wanting to punish Mike.
Well, Mike and his new fiancée, Julia, claim his ex, Christy, 15-year ex, Christy, is jealous of their relationship and uses the police to harass them nonstop. 20 times in the last 4 months, 6 or 7 times in a month. She says that's not true. Christy says she's not harassing Mike. She just wants to see her son. Take a look.
Me and my ex-husband's relationship started to go downhill when he got this new girlfriend, fiance, Julia. They barely know each other. This girl's been on the scene maybe 90 days. Since she's been around, he's been just 100% hateful. Mike is always sending me nasty text messages. In the text messages, he's calling me evil and toxic. I just get this gut feeling because me and Mike have had a good relationship, but the wording of the messages leads me to believe that Julia is texting from Mike's phone. I think Julia needs to butt out and mind her own business. Mike is stopping me from seeing my son. He tells my son not to answer the phone, that he doesn't have to listen. She's crazy, and it really upsets me because I'm a really good mom to my son. My 16-year-old son is my best friend. My son's never treated me like this or told me he doesn't want to come home. I admit I have been to Mike's house a couple of times with police officers, but I had to reinforce my court order. I felt like I very much had no choice. I'm his mother and I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, Christy, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You've been listening to everything so
I have.
far. So let me give you an opportunity to respond to anything you've heard so far.
This couldn't be any further from the truth. I don't know who this girl is. I've met her one time and I've properly introduced myself to her. Mike sent her to my house without even introducing us to pick up my child. I told her, I was very polite. I said, half of what you heard is true, half is not. Stay out of my way, I'll stay out of yours. I don't know this girl. I don't have her phone number. I don't talk about her. I don't care about her. My problem is with Michael and the co-parenting that we need to figure out. Yes, I have sent the police to my son's school. He has a broken collarbone, and that no one has been getting back to me, and I have every right to know what's going on with my son with a broken collarbone.
Let me ask you guys a couple of questions in general, okay?
Yes.
Do you think you have an agenda of unfinished emotional business running here in competition with what is in the child's best interest?
No, there's no emotions unresolved.
You have no agenda here other than what can I do that's in my child's best interest?
Exactly. That's my agenda.
I absolutely have no agenda. I only care about my kids.
Okay. Does it seem reasonable to you to send the police to pull him out of football practice?
Definitely.
That seems reasonable to you?
Yes. I had tried to contact Dad.
Do you know where they practice?
Oh, yeah. I sent the officers because
And he's 6'5".
Yes.
He does not blend in.
No.
I mean, if you wanted to know if he was okay, you could drive by there and see if he's out there.
But because of what is being said, this constant, I'm in the town that they live in, this is why I don't go down there. And because I told my son, I had texted him that day, and I had also been calling, and I said, listen, I do not want to come down to your school and embarrass you and pull you out of class so I can physically see you. If you do not answer these text messages or call me back, I will be sending an officer to do a safety check, because at this point I'm very concerned about your collarbone and what the police officers had to tell me the last time I was at Mike's house. Definitely.
Okay. So you threatened him with embarrassing him if he didn't do what you wanted him to do?
I told him that I would send an officer. No, I was being upfront. I'm a very upfront person. I told him this is what's going to happen if you don't reach back out. Like the court order states, I'm to have contact with my son at least one time a day. Definitely.
That's not what it says.
It is what it says.
No, actually it isn't. You have a current custody agreement.
Yes.
That's not what it says.
The one that before we had went to court this last time, it did say that, and that's what I was referring to with Mike and to Mike.
Well, you have one in place now.
No, again,
that
yes.
does not say that, correct?
I'm pretty sure it does say that in the new one.
No, actually it doesn't. It says that you're to have contact at the discretion of you and your son.
That's
And then
different.
it goes on later to say that it's at his discretion.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to say that if you make a phone call, that it's endemic upon the parent with whom the child is at the time to have that phone call returned within 24 hours.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a breach on his part if it isn't done, not on your son's part.
Yes.
But you think it's reasonable to, because you're acknowledging, I know this is going to embarrass you, but I'm going to do it anyway.
At this point, I'm just done dealing with it. My hands are up in the air, and if I have to involve CPS or law enforcement, then I'm going to do that, because I feel at this point I've been left with no other options.
Mike says that Christie's reopened a $139,000 back child support case against him purely out of spite. Christy claims she had no choice.
Yep.
Well, is this a deadbeat dad? Well, let's find out after the break.
Christy thinks she has custody of Mike's son, and that's not the case.
I'm going back to court because Mike is negligent. I know Mike is telling my son that he can ignore me.
It seems like she's out to get me. My father and I purchased my son a new dirt bike. Christy wants a dirt bike. I think Christy wants to sell the dirt bike for money.
Christy came over to the house. She blocked our truck in to the driveway and called Mike demanding that he bring down the dirt bike and load it into the back of her truck. The sheriffs came. The sheriffs said that they couldn't force Mike to give her the bike. It's super embarrassing that Christy shows up to our house over a bike. We live in a nice neighborhood, and our neighbors are now wondering, like, why are the cops there all the time?
Well, Mike says that on August 19th, after Christy allegedly called the police over 20 times, the courts changed the original custody agreement to ensure his son lives mostly with him. Christy says she's not going to stand for that and is taking Mike back to court, actually tomorrow,
Yes.
to try and get it changed.
I have full custody of my son.
Christy thinks she has custody of Mike's son, and that's not the case. Mike has custody of his own son.
I know Mike is telling my son that he can ignore me.
Christy's constantly serving me with court papers.
Our new court custody agreement between me and my ex-husband is during the week is with Dad, and I get every other weekend. And it's up to me and my son's discretion for him to come home during the week. I'm going back to court because Mike is negligent. He does not enforce the order.
She's putting a huge financial burden on my home. She's come after me on an old child support case. She's claiming I owe her $139,000. I don't feel like I owe Christy any child support. Financially, he's lived with me 100% of the time.
Now he's playing the part that I moved and I'm not a good mom.
Christy is controlling. I feel like it's a huge thing of not having the say-so in everything that's happening in her son's life. It seems like she's out to get me 24/7.
Actually, you do owe her $139,000, right?
Yeah.
And until you have it modified by the court, which can be done retroactively, because that was set assuming that the child was going to live with her, but in fact the child lived with you.
Yeah.
But right now you do owe that, and you could go to jail for not paying it.
Yeah.
And you guys just ignore what the court says and interpret these agreements the way you want to, as though there's not something written down, and there is. What I am a little flabbergasted at is that both of you have so little insight that you say, no, we don't have any agenda competing with the best interest of our son. This is a text message you sent April 23rd of 19. Mike, you say, you're trash and I'm done with this. You are not owed a dime. I've been there way more in his school, in his coaching and practice. You cheap-ass bitch. Talk to you later. I'm not playing. You're an evil person. Yep. Christy, don't text me again. Opening rears now. Have a good day. Mike, nope, sorry. Get away from us. You are evil and toxic. Our son knows you wanted to abort him. I said no. You have had 9 abortions already. Sick, very sick. Get off the drugs. Your son isn't happy or feeling safe, and you can use all of these text messages in court. I don't care. Well, I'm glad that you don't, because I'm sure that she will. But how can you write that and tell me I don't have any angst, I don't have any unfinished business with this woman at all?
Sometimes you can lose your balance. I mean, people have their breaking points.
Then Christy writes, I have raised him to always respect everyone, even your weird-ass family. I thought I came from a messed-up family. Damn. This is like the 9th fiance must be pregnant, LMAO. Mike, I will make sure I get everything back in child support that you should have paid, loser. I'm sure your old lady gets child support that you and your kids are living off of. You will be sorry when it's all said and done, and don't come crying to me. Come on, guys. Because you have to understand, When the court appoints a forensic psychologist, their charge is not to determine who is the best parent. Their charge is to determine if either parent is suitable. After being fired from her job, Christy filed a restraining order against Mike's parents that also barred her son from seeing his grandparents. Why is all of that involved? I'll tell you after the break.
I called the police to do a welfare check. When I didn't hear from my son for a week, I sent my son 19 text messages and phone calls.
She sent the sheriffs to Mike's son's football practice, embarrassing him in front of all his friends.
My son said, "Dad, the sheriffs are at my school because I didn't call my mother back."
The sheriff called me and told me my son was okay and that Mike and I needed to figure it out because at this point, we're both losing.
I said you are both cavalier about the custody agreement and court orders here, and you're going to court tomorrow, right?
We are.
I'm not a lawyer, but I am trained as a forensic psychologist. You two don't want to get anywhere near that courthouse. Neither one of you do, because let me tell you, when you invite the government into your family, that's a wild card.
Yes.
I think you're better off to try to find some common ground peacefully to work this out, because one or both of you could get really shocked here. And like, you misinterpret these agreements. In December of '05, you had your original agreement, okay? And in your original agreement, it said there's going to be joint legal and joint physical custody. It says the mother shall have all non-designated time with the child except as outlined below. And then it says that you're going to alternate weekends, right? You're going to have every other weekend, and you're going to have every other weekend. But then those are the designated times, and all the time other than that's going to be with you. In the current agreement, that flip-flopped.
Yes.
It now says the father is going to have all non-designated time with the child, and additional contact between the minor and the mother shall, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and it says that you're going to alternate weekends. Now, even though this is what it said, you actually had the child during this time, even though that's not what it said.
Yes.
No.
Then it goes on, and so it says, neither party shall alienate, neither party shall discuss court proceedings, refrain from using illegal substances or having the child in the presence of, and telephone contact at reasonable times and return within the same day. Here it says neither party will alienate, neither party will discuss, refrain from using illegal substances, and return phone calls within the same day.
Yes.
Now, you said, I have full custody of my son. That's what you said.
Yes.
That's not true. You have joint legal and physical custody as defined by the order. And you said that you, during those other times other than the weekend, is at your discretion.
Me and my son. Yes.
Well, it does say that, but then it goes on in the agreement to say it's at his discretion. You guys are really butting heads over an order that you haven't really bothered to understand. The greatest gift you can give this child is that he has a birthday party and you both show up and there's no drama.
Yes.
That you show up and it's just all about him. Now, Christy believes that Mike is a drug addict. Mike says Christy is a pothead. Christy wants her son to live with her because his grades are slipping under his father's care. Mike says his grades have suffered due to the drama caused by Christy. And I say that all of this is being brought about by baggage.
Yes.
Unresolved differences between the two, and baggage the two of them brought into the relationship to begin with. We're going to talk about that after the break and try to get to some solutions. We'll be right back.
I'm fed up with co-parenting with Christy.
Christy has a problem with marijuana. Marijuana use affects Christy's parenting.
I know that my ex-husband has a problem with cocaine.
Christy sits around all day, smokes weed, grows marijuana plants in her backyard.
One time, Mike was under the influence of narcotics. My son had called me very upset because his dad was just not himself. He proceeded to get into the bathtub, tell my son that he was having a heart attack. My son drove him to the hospital. This is not okay.
So we've just got accusations flying back and forth. And this thing's been very intertwined because you actually worked for a family business,
I did,
correct?
for 10 years.
For your parents' family
Yes,
business?
absolutely, yes.
After the divorce?
After. I've been very close with the family up until recently, yes.
And you were living in a home
One of their properties.
that you were leasing from the parents?
Yes.
But then you get fired and evicted.
Yes.
Could this get any more enmeshed and intertwined? I don't think so. I have a colleague here that I want to weigh in on this. I want to introduce you to Dr. Paula Bruce. She is the founder, CEO, and clinical director of Paula E. Bruce, PhD and Associates. Now, she is a Los Angeles-based clinical forensic psychologist who specializes in working with difficult couples and families. Now, Dr. Paula, thanks so much for being here, number one. Clearly, this is a very busy situation, but they say no agenda other than best interest of the child. I say that is absolutely absurd. You've studied this situation. What do you see?
Well, it seems quite obvious there is a lot going on here. And I think there's probably a lot in each of their own individual histories that has informed how they've approached parenting and how they've approached conflict between each other. There's lots of worries about abandonment in this family, and I think those are things that that they need to understand, understanding what has motivated the decisions that each of them has made.
And we don't have to go into a lot of detail here, but you didn't feel safe in your family of origin.
No.
And his family, who you had a great affection for, really became your family.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where you felt safe. That's where you felt structure.
Yes.
And as Dr. Bruce is talking about, that got pulled away from you.
Absolutely.
You get, your marriage goes away, your job goes away, the family that you had become a member of goes away, and then to add insult to injury, they evict you from the home.
Yeah. Right.
And so everything that you experienced initially in your family gets put
All
on
over
repeat.
again. Yeah.
And so you get pretty panicky and clingy about your son.
Oh, yes.
Because you think, I do not want this to happen to him.
That's what I feel like, absolutely.
If you can understand that, that will help you to be able to figure out what you need to calm down.
Yes.
So that you don't act from this place of emergency, because it's having an effect on your child, and it's having an effect on you being able to resolve this issue between you and your ex-husband.
You've sent text messages to your son.
Yes.
That have been manipulative. The boys cried in the morning, talking about his brothers.
Yeah.
The boys cried in the morning when they woke up and you weren't here. Not to mention, I cried myself to sleep and didn't get to bed until 3 a.m. over this crap with you and your dad. I was crying because of you doing this. Thanks, son. I'm very disappointed in you.
Yes.
That's why I say you don't want to get anywhere near this courthouse.
Yeah.
All right, we have to take a break. Then we're going to talk about you in this situation. We'll be right back. While we're in commercial break, I want to ask you all if you're having a good time. Everybody having a good time? Well, I'll tell all of you at home, if you're going to be in the Los Angeles area and you want to attend a taping, go to drphil.com and click tickets. The tickets are free, and we have a lot of fun here, right? Yeah. Plus, Plus, when you're here, you get a sneak peek at upcoming episodes and my podcast, Fill in the Blanks. And if you've been listening to my latest series, Relationship Reality Check, subtitled, How Much Fun Are You to Live With? We've worked really hard to get rid of the myths and bad spirits in your relationships. Now it's time to choose to behave differently. And in episode 6, available right now, it's time to make a substantial difference in the health, pleasure, joy, and satisfaction of your relationship. So that's what we're going to talk about. Things you can do to change your relationship, whether your partner takes part or not. So you're going to learn to reclaim your core. So Fill in the Blanks, available right now, free on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. It just comes to you automatically. And my wife, Robin, has a new podcast as well, which is on the list of the top new podcast. It's called I've Got a Secret, which means she has no secrets because she tells everything on I've Got a Secret. And she has some great guests, so check that out as well. All right, now back to this show. My guests today say they just can't stand each other and can no longer effectively co-parent their 16-year-old son. I've been talking with Dr. Paula Bruce, and we're discussing what each parent brings to the relationship today, what they brought to their original relationship. You're pretty impulsive.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
What do you see here?
Yes, I agree. It seems, Mike, that you form relationships really quickly. I mean, you've talked about multiple broken engagements in the last several years. And there's this dynamic here which suggests that it works well for you when you feel like things are going well between you and others. There's this need to be really liked. But the moment that they discover any disappointment in you, I think it's really, really hard for you to sustain that contact. And then you break off the relationship and things turn.
If I were advising you, and I am, I would not go into that courtroom tomorrow because you are both vulnerable. And I don't like inviting the government into a family if it can be resolved otherwise. And I think you need some help as an individual. I think you need some help as an individual to deal with not topics that you guys peck at each other about, but issues that each of you live with. And then I think you need to have a co-parenting plan that is professionally devised, monitored to help you execute. And if you can do that, you could find some peace here without putting your family dynamic in jeopardy. So you'll do this, right?
Yes, I will.
And you will.
Absolutely.
And I will make these arrangements immediately. I mean, right now.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, take a breath, okay? All right. Fair enough?
Trying to get...
Okay. Coming up, it killed her mom, her grandma, and almost killed her. Find out what it was when we meet her next. My next guest, Dale, lost her mother and grandmother within months of each other to an illness many people have never even heard of, including me. And then she ended up in the hospital with the very same infection. Here's Dale's story.
This is my mom and my grandma. In 2005, my grandmother contracted C. difficile, or C. diff. This disease is a highly contagious bacterial infection. When my grandmother was released from the hospital, my mother moved into her house to care for her. The C. diff did return, and my grandmother was taken back to the hospital. While my grandmother was fighting for her life, my mother was experiencing flu-like symptoms. I took my mother to the hospital, and she was diagnosed with C. difficile. While my mother was battling C. diff, my grandmother's health took a turn for the worse, and she ended up passing away. And then I was hospitalized. I was completely shocked that I came down with C. diff. My mother's condition had worsened. They put her on a ventilator in the ICU. Ultimately, she passed away.
Where's it?
My daughters never got to meet such wonderful women. I'm here living proof that people can survive, but this disease tore my family apart.
Well, Dale is joining me now, along with our very good friend and Chief Patient Officer of Pfizer, Dr. Frida Lewis Hall. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
And Dale, I can see this is still very raw for you, and I'm very sorry about your loss. When you started showing symptoms of C. difficile or C. diff, you caught it really early, right?
Yes, I was actually at my grandmother's funeral, and I started having stomach issues and had fainted. My father took me to the hospital, and I did test positive for C. difficile. I was actually taking antibiotics for a respiratory infection, and I have been told that antibiotics do make you more susceptible to the C. diff infection.
Dr. Frida, what is C. difficile?
Clostridioides difficile, or C. difficile, is a bacterium that can cause a range of symptoms, from stomach pain and diarrhea to life-threatening inflammation of the colon. And C. diff can live anywhere. That includes on surfaces like doorknobs and toilet seats, and can stay on those surfaces for months despite cleaning.
So where does a person catch this germ?
Well, you know, we used to think that people could only catch the serious disease if they were in the hospital or in a nursing home. We now know that about half of the cases are caught or acquired in the community.
Okay, so who does this affect?
So, first of all, there are about or around 425,000 cases in the U.S. per year. And it usually affects older people. So someone young like Dale is not your typical C. diff patient, but as you can see, it can affect anyone.
Well, Dale mentioned she took antibiotics, so how do antibiotics play a role in this?
Yeah, so, you know, as important or while antibiotics are really an important tool in treating infections, some can deplete the good bacteria that lives in your gut. And this can possibly increase the risk of a C. diff infection.
Dale, you recovered from the infection, but it came back, right?
Yes, I did get a recurrence about 2 months later. Luckily, this time it was caught early, and I was able to continue my treatments at home. And it's been 14 years since I've had the C. difficile infection.
Wow. So how common is it for this infection to come back like it did in Dale's case?
Yeah, so not uncommon. About 1 in 5 people who are treated for C. difficile infections actually experience a recurrence. And what's important is that the recurrence may not just be one time. It can recur again and again.
So what can people do to help prevent getting this infection?
First of all, only take antibiotics when they're needed and as directed by your doctor. Next, good personal hygiene. And that means good old-fashioned hand washing with clean water and soap. Now, the alcohol-based sanitizers may not be enough to effectively kill these C. diff spores. So it's important, hand washing, clean water, and soap. And if you are around someone who has a C. diff infection and you begin to feel ill, then you have to do what Dale did, and that is get to your doctor right away. And that way, they can monitor your symptoms, diagnose you early, and treat you, because that's key.
You bring really good stuff we need to hear here. And to keep yourself and your loved ones safe, make sure that you check out their website for this, which is gethealthystayhealthy.com. And while they're there, they should do what?
They should sign up for a monthly newsletter.
That's right. Okay, I want to thank all of my guests today, especially our friend, Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, and a special thanks to Dr. Paula Bruce. I'm going to go wash my hands right now. Before I go, I want to share a tweet I received from Mikey. He says, Dr. Phil, it's time, Doc. You got to run for president. Yeah. He says, you are the almighty mediator. Only you can bring the left and right together. The fate of this country is in your hands. Yeah, well... like I said, I would love to save the country, but I have to go wash my hands. So somebody else is going to have to do it. But thank you for your faith. I really enjoy hearing from you on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so keep your posts and comments coming. I read them all. We'll see you next time.